right. So welcome, Gail. Welcome to the Wise Warrior conversation. We met, I think we had our first conversation about maybe a month or so ago. It feels
Mhm.
like forever ago, and I don't think it really was that long, but timelines are shifting all the time, and it's feels like, one day is a week sometimes. Um, so, I was kind of going back through your LinkedIn profile to like remind myself of everything. And so part of your mission in life is to help spirit-led entrepreneurs, healers, coaches to unleash their authentic and visible presence. And I really love like on your LinkedIn profile when you talk about like, taking the spirit-led coaches and healers from hiding in plain sight to becoming bold and gentle leaders. Because I think, myself included, and a lot of the my friends and healers and coaches in my Wise Warrior community, and I'm sure like out on YouTube, like it's a real struggle to like, hey, look at me, look at me, look at me, and you have so much to offer, and your message isn't landing, your story isn't landing. So tell us a little bit about yourself, like, kind of where you started from, and what led you to this path of helping other spirit-led entrepreneurs like find their boldness.
Mm. Yeah. Well, first I want to say thank you for inviting me to have this conversation here in your space. And yeah, I can't believe it's only been a month since we connected, and I hear you about like our interesting relationship with time lately. And yeah, like this whole theme of bold and gentle leader has been really alive in my conversations, in particular this week. Probably not coincidence given what last week held for us here in the United States, and really kind of looking at leadership and what kind of leaders do we really want right now, and to bring us into, this new earth paradigm that is in the process of birthing, really, right now. And so, yeah, my journey around that really started in childhood. When I was a child, I made a promise to be silent
Mhm.
and invisible after experiencing abuse. We talked about this when we talked privately, and really fear kept me from speaking up for many, many years. And when I finally broke that silence and told my family what was going on, they didn't believe me. And this was the outcome that I didn't even imagine. I had all kinds of fantasies about what would happen, and what actually happened was not even on my radar. So I'm sure you can imagine like how disorienting and confusing and just like, I was 14 at that time. So definitely in a different place as far as my development went, but it just was so shocking to my system. And that left a very deep impact on me. And fast forward to 2013 when I started my business, and I came into my business with a background in business communications, marketing, PR. I was a journalist. I went to school, I have a journalism degree. So like all of these pieces of communication and connection and storytelling were all parts of what I now recognize as like these were my God-given gifts. It wasn't only these are the things that I can't not do. Like this is just part of who I am. Um, so I started my business, but I was actually really kind of struggling with my own visibility. Um, I was very strong in those marketing skills and in that relationship building skills. Like I'm naturally inclined that way. And yet it didn't take me long to recognize through my business that I'm out of alignment here. And I would get in the room with clients. And when I started out in 2013, I was focusing specifically on helping coaches create their signature stories, the story behind the work that they do. And I was coming at it from a very practical, logical, strategic place. And I'd get in the room with my clients, and there would be tears and tissues, and they would open up. And I can't tell you how many times I've heard the phrase, like, I've never told anybody this before. And I was like, something else is going on here. Something's happening here that I didn't expect. And so, of course, with time and study and my own journey, really what was happening is that stories are healing. They're powerful, they're healing. The process of really getting to know yourself on that deeper, intimate level is transformative, it's healing. But I hadn't learned about marketing and communication in that way,
Mhm.
right? I kind of stumbled into it. And so the more I worked with clients who were opening up and trusting me with their stories, the more I began to recognize that my own childhood wounds were affecting my confidence, my alignment, my integrity, and my results. And I realized that I couldn't keep hiding my truth if I wanted to thrive, not only in my business, but in my life. And that was a long process. I mean, that was 2013, and we're in 2024, and it's still evolving.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and I know there's a lot of stories out there in the coaching community about, like, and it changed overnight. Like, this is not that story.
I don't
This
think
is not
anyone
that
really
story.
changes overnight. It's incremental things, and then like the breakthrough is overnight. The shift from like the old story, the old paradigm into the new, that's what is instantaneous. But it's
Yes, the
all
awareness.
years.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
it
Yeah. And so go ahead. Go
I
ahead.
was just gonna like I wrote a chapter in like a multi-author thing, and it was about my healing story, and it really is such a cathartic process. And I had thought I had been like working on that, but like having to write about it and like remember certain things that I went through during my illness, it was heart-wrenching to have to like remember that and recall it. So, stories are really so powerful. So,
Yeah. Yeah. And you touched on something there too about like we go through the experience, whatever that experience is, and we do what we can to survive, right? And we do what we can in the moment. And I work with a lot of clients who have, their stories are about loss, or their stories are, about trauma or illness, or, these things that really deeply impact us. And there is a process of working through that. I learned this the hard way because I didn't do it this way at all. But there is a process of working with those kinds of sensitive, difficult stories in a way that you are able to maintain your self-compassion, your self-love, and not re-traumatize yourself. And that was not, I'm sure that there was somebody out there who probably could have guided me through that process, but I didn't know what I didn't know.
mm,
And that's a part of why I do this work with clients too. And my work has expanded from story just to, communication, authentic connections, healthy business relationships. Um, but that how you are with your stories is how you're going to show up in a conversation too, right? And so we can make these changes. Like, we can do it the way I did it, which was like to just push through at all costs. And I remember the first time I took a leap and shared my story publicly, like I made myself sick over it.
mm,
Like I literally wanted to throw up because I didn't know how to do the work, the inner work to, number one, heal a bunch of things that I still needed to heal before telling my story. And I don't have any regrets for doing it the way that I did it, because now now I have this information and can help people through it, right? Like it had to happen this way, I believe. But yeah, it didn't have to, on the other side of it, I can look at it and say, oh gosh, it didn't have to be so traumatizing for me.
Mm,
Um, because I could have taken my time and done more healing work and energy work and gotten myself into a place of alignment, maybe not perfect alignment, but better alignment, to be able to stand up in front of a room of 50, 100 people and share that very vulnerable story with them without then spending the next month like basically ruminating about all the things that I did wrong and how awful I felt
mm,
about it, and like the doubt and the questions and like how does this even relate to the work that I'm doing, even though I had, people came up to me after that and they were like that was just so powerful. And it worked in all the ways that I like strategically would teach my clients. I shared that story, I shared teaching, and I sold a program. Like that was sort of like I achieved my goal, but I felt like shit
mm,
after it. And I was like, that doesn't feel right to me either. Right. And so it was those pieces like that, all of these experiences are really a part of moving me into places of um, doing that inner work for myself, but understanding how to hold that space for my clients, improving my coaching skills, really understanding the anatomy of transformation, really taking an energy first and healing centered approach to my work with clients. I mean, yes, the strategy is important too, but your strategy is only going to be as good as your alignment.
mm.
And that was like the big lesson to me of like, oh, actually, like I can't think my throat think my way and form my way through this, which is how that was my default pattern, right? Like I achieved recovering overachiever here, achieved every goal I ever set because I worked hard and I pushed my way through, and you know, um, and that wasn't working for me in my business. I had to go a different way.
Well, kind of the same recovering overdoer. Like it is, and that's where it's like that is that the gentle leadership of it's not about pushing. And
Yeah.
I know every time that I've kind of like stepped back from the pushing and like what is the right timing? What is like listening to my inner knowing. Um, Things got done faster and
Mm.
easier and
Yeah.
um, you know, and it's counterintuitive of like how does that work? Like that should work that way because everybody tells you to push push push. Um, but I think like that is the paradigm shift of one, I think it's about like healing
Mhm.
because everybody, like even if they haven't had like in this lifetime a really horrific tragedy, there's still like the generational, we've been in wars for thousands of years, probably even longer than that, but like even just recorded history, there's been so much war, and that stuff is damaging to families and men and women, children, like so that trauma is carried through all of us and we have to heal it. And to your point of like we didn't know what we didn't know when we all started our journeys, and part of that going from the unknowing to the knowing is what makes us powerful healers because we did it the long way. um, and we learned a lot of valuable lessons that we can help somebody else transition faster and smoother. And also I think like you know, especially like prior to 2012, there weren't a lot of people who were doing coaching or healing, where it wasn't like, oh, like, I have to go to the underground or like this, you know, weird space. And can I really trust this person to like, you know, now, like, I went through my dark night of the soul like in 2009. And there, like, I knew of some people who did Reiki, but that was like the extent of the healing work that I knew about at that time. Um,
Yeah.
and so we've like we've all been in that journey of like figuring it out and growing and downloading new ways of doing things. So like, it's being patient and loving with ourselves of like we couldn't have done it any other way. We were meant to
Yeah.
go through this journey to get to where we are, to set up the next generation for that path into that bold but gentle leadership.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Beautiful. Yeah. And, we live in this remarkable time where there's all these different modalities that are available to us. And you're right, like, for probably much of my lifetime, I think I might be a little older than you. But much of my lifetime, like I was always interested and fascinated. Like I remember as a kid, like I had a book about ESP. So like these things were always kind of coming into my awareness. But it wasn't freely talked about. It wasn't, there's plenty of practitioners out there, but like it's not like it is today.
yeah.
And we have access to many different modes of healing. And that's a beautiful thing from traditional to, alternative to holistic. And it's exciting to be alive and have that out there at
Mhm.
this time. That being said, like we think that so many people are so myself, this has been myself included. Um, and I think this goes to your point about like the ancestral pieces, right? Like we've been caught in the frequency of fear, right? And so it actually takes a lot of courage to raise your hand and say, um, no, actually, therapy's not working for me.
Mhm.
I'm going to try something else. I'm going to, okay, sound healing. What's that all about? And to trust that what you're being drawn to might actually be the thing that you need in that moment, right? Like we've been
Exactly. It's a
taught,
stepping stone into like,
right, right. Like to really lean into your intuition and your inner knowing of like, okay, this might be the next thing that's on my path that's going to support me. Yeah.
and especially like, talk therapy is great, but it's a you're staying stuck in the story and the trauma, and it's not about like, okay, how do we get you out of that? How do we transition? It's reprogramming it constantly into your DNA and your subconscious mind what that story is, and it becomes your identity. Versus I think some of these alternative paths, it's about clearing it and releasing
Yeah.
it, not saying that the story didn't happen, but like how do I move forward and who do I become? Because again, it's a story, it's an experience, even a crappy one, that like sets you up to like help others, um to change things through the next generation. Like we go through these experiences for a reason, and it's about learning to embrace that and open to this new possibility of how do I take that and shift.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think too that it really depends on where you are
Mhm.
with that journey. I know for me, um, it took it took a suicide attempt for me to actually get the help that I needed. Um, in my mid-20s, because I was carrying all of this unresolved trauma. Like, and I was asking for, I was asking people for help and not getting the help that I needed, right? And so for the first time ever in my life, it took it took getting into the hospital and having a psychiatrist or a psychologist, I don't remember now, but th when that man said to me, "There's nothing wrong with you," like that was profound because I felt worthless and hopeless and broken, and that somehow I did something wrong. And for this person who didn't know me at all to look at me and say, "You didn't do anything wrong. Like this is totally normal. What you're feeling is normal. Like you should be feeling this way." It's like that's where I was. Like I needed that. I needed somebody in, a medical person, right? Like because that was what I needed at that time, right? And I got into therapy, and that's what I needed at that time, and I felt better, and but I didn't stop there, right? Because you I was a different person through that experience, right? Like not different, but I became just a little bit more of the true me through that experience. And then in 2019, I was like, wait a minute, like I have all the things that I said that I wanted, but I don't feel good. I don't feel good. I'm not happy. What's this all about? It was like little did I know what was on the horizon, right?
Yeah.
Um, and so like I've always been drawn to the healing arts. I've always been drawn to mysticism and everything, and that's always been a part of my life. But there have definitely been these pivotal points along the way where it's just that deeper initiation or that deeper level. And it takes really knowing yourself, I think, or really being open to knowing yourself. I don't like how do you know yourself and at the same time be getting to know yourself, right? But to be open to and radically honest with yourself, like like this is not something's off here, right? Like let's explore.
Yeah.
Let's explore and to give yourself grace. Like I'm not a failure. Yes, I said I wanted all of these things and I'm still unhappy. What's that all about? Doesn't mean I failed. Doesn't mean I was wrong. Might just mean like now I'm wanting something different in my life, and that's okay, right? But we humans are so sometimes so hard on ourselves, right? Like, and we think like, um, yeah, commitment's a wonderful thing, but we're also dynamic, evolving creatures, and that's okay.
Yeah. Well, I
Yeah.
think there's the like there's especially like when we're younger, there's the things that we think we should want because, society programs us to want those things or, like our family, says you should want this thing. And so we strive to get it. And then once we get it, we're like, it isn't really what I want, or like, I'm glad I got it, but
Right. Sometimes it's a shade, right? Like sometimes it's not exactly, yeah, like maybe it is the thing that we were taught we wanted, and maybe we really do want that, but it's off in
yeah,
some way. Like maybe it needs a 15-degree shift, right? Or maybe it's like, wow, this actually isn't what I wanted at all.
yeah,
No. And to get again, like to just give yourself grace and compassion of that, like is I think one of the greatest gifts that you can give yourself. Like yes, take full responsibility for what you've created in your life, but also you don't have to beat yourself up over that.
yeah. And I think also like, achieving stuff is like it's a continual thing. Like it's not about getting to the end result of that and being like, okay, life should be completely done
Yeah.
and all good. Like life isn't done until the very end, till the last breath is taken. It's always okay. Like what's next? How do I shift this? Like, how do I keep growing and exploring? And so, allowing us to be in that um constant striving and achieving and growing and not worried about the destination.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that I know for me, in my experience, like I was very much attached to the destination. Like that was a big learning for me of like just enjoy the ride. Just en- and you know that actually came to me in the weirdest way. I was at a fair. There's a local fair near where I live, and I was on this ride called this. I think it's called the Seven Seas. I was with my kids. They were little at the time. And I like amusement parks. I like that kind of thing. And this ride, it just kind of like you sit in it and it just kind of goes up and around and then it goes this way, you know. So it's not like super intense or anything, but I was like, God, I'm really not liking this ride. And at some point on the ride, I realized like I am clenching.
mm,
I'm clenching. Like I'm just like, and I relaxed. And because I was relaxed and in the flow, it was a much more pleasant experience for me. I was like, whoa, that was like, you know, receiving divine wisdom, right? Like on a carnival ride. Um, but yeah, it was kind of like that was sort of the message that I got from that. I was like, relax, you know, be in the flow, enjoy where you're at this moment,
yeah,
right? It's not about wherever it is I mean, it might be, you know, it's great to have direction and goals and vision and, you know, purpose and all of those things. And it's like you're going to learn things and receive things along the way if you can stay relaxed and open
yeah,
and vulnerable sometimes too.
yeah. And I think like yeah, I just had a flashback to our first conversation. And I think like one of the things that like we talked about is that um that balance between like the feminine way of doing business, which is that being in the flow and kind of allowing things to happen, kind of like knowing the general direction you want to go so that like the flow doesn't all of a sudden take you like somewhere completely different that isn't
Right.
in alignment, but like is going with the flow and opening to other possibilities, but also like bringing in the masculine energy, especially like as women in business, especially spirit led businesses, like I know like part of my struggle, like when I kind of committed to starting my own business, one, being in corporate, I had to like fight all the time to like, get what I needed, get what my team needed. And I was tired of that like constant battling. And
Yeah.
so, I was like, I want to be in my feminine and I want to be in my receiving. And it was just like such a collapse, in my business, my career, in all these aspects of my life, including, finances, um, of like trying to be in this feminine energy. Um, and so it's taken me this process of realizing that, you know, yes, I get to receive, I get to ask for help, I get to like be in the flow, like, day to day and not like not forcing something to happen, but yet at the same time, my practical side of my personality, um, and the more masculine side of myself, the warrior, the wise warrior, like also needs a place at the table in a healthy way, and
Yeah.
bringing that energy forward. And I think like that's one of the things that I was really like that I really connected with you over was that like you have this beautiful feminine energy, but you also have that practical strength and the masculine energy behind what you do, the strategy. And so how do you help your clients like you know be authentic and find that balance between their feminine and masculine energy, especially like if somebody is, because there are people who are really feminine and maybe need to strengthen some of their masculine energy, and then there's others who are like have more of that masculine energy who maybe need to soften into the flow. So like how do you work with clients to find that balance?
Yeah, I love this I love this discussion, and I remember us talking about that too. And yeah, you're right. Like you need both. You need both in your business, you need both in your life. We as a society need both. We need both healthy masculine, healthy feminine energy, and we all have that within us. We all have that within us. And I so resonate with your story on, kind of being predominantly in that masculine energy. Same, I'm saying same here. And even when I was younger, like very much in that, um, yeah, I mean, very much in that masculine energy. And I think part of it was just like um, my curiosity about the world, and like I love being physical, and like most of my friends were boys growing up, like very much tomboy. Um, Go get them, like takes initiative, all of that stuff. And I think that that's all still true about me. And it really wasn't until same very similar issue where like I shouldn't say issue, but part of my journey was recognizing like, oh gosh, like I'm like really full on in my masculine, and there's no feminine energy, receptivity, or because I can really kind of come in and take charge. Like I never thought of myself as a leader, but I really do have that energy. I like that's just part of the way I came here. Um, and similar situation where I was like, I went into the feminine, and I was just, and I wasn't trying to be in my feminine. It just sort of happened. And collapse is such a great word that you use, because that's how it felt like to me too. Like I just um yeah, like the finances and the relationships, like all this stuff started falling away
Mhm.
when I started to really step more into that feminine place. And I really couldn't even be in my masculine energy. And again, it was like one of those things where I look back at it now where I'm like, I get it, but I didn't get it at the time. Was really frustrated, was really resisting, pissed off at God and all of that. Um, but I needed to get to know her. I needed to become acquainted more deeply, more intimately with that side of myself. And actually, it's a beautiful part that we all have that deserves a, like you said, it deserves a place at the table, deserves a voice, deserves to be integrated into um, our experience. And so, I feel like now, right, like over the last couple of years, like we're coming back to center, right? Like it was over here and then it was over here and now we're coming back to center. And you need the structure of the masculine. You need that active energy, especially as an entrepreneur. And when you couple that with the receptivity, the inspiration, I think of feminine energy in business, the inspiration, the vision,
Mhm.
right? And the masculine being the action behind the inspiration. Like that's such a powerful combination. And so it's interesting that you bring this up, because I do get a lot of, I work with men and women, and um, primarily with women. And it's a lot of that unbalanced feminine energy often, right? There's disorganization, and I don't say this, I hope that this doesn't sound judgmental, and it's not, it's just an observation. Disorganization, there's a lot of story around like, how can I ask somebody to work with me, to pay me, there's a lot of that going on. Now, with men, it's different issues. Like they have different things going on. the men that I work with primarily are actually pretty in tune with their feminine, and it's more of a balancing, like they have integration of both, but it's more of a refinement and a balance. This just happens to be my clients. I'm not saying that all men are like this or all women are like this, right? With women, it's more getting them to trust that masculine. Like this is a big deal.
That's
Like that's
like,
actually asking a very, it's a very big ask, and I understand this. I really truly understand. It's a big ask to a woman to trust in the masculine, right? I mean, how many thousands of years have women been oppressed, abused, and men have too. Like let's be
yeah,
clear, men. Um, but women, I think, really carry that
yeah.
deeply, deeply in their souls.
Well, I think because our history, like the goddesses, the goddess temples were wiped out. So,
Yeah,
we all were like repressed and abused and traumatized, but it's, I think for women it was literally we're going to try and wipe out the truth of who you
yeah,
are.
right.
And so like, it is that distrust of the world, and of the masculine, and especially like, the existing leadership, and politics aside, just in general, like from corporations through politics through, you know all organizations, it's more of this toxic masculine energy that's it's really harsh on those of us, I think, who are trying to have that balance, and who, are like spiritually led, who are intuitive, who are empathic, um, and so learning to trust ourselves and learning to like pull more of our gifts in, and start to like change things, bit by bit as we strengthen in that balance.
Yeah, yeah. And the key phrase is learning to trust ourselves.
Mhm.
Learning to trust ourselves, right? Because we at the end of the day, we don't know what people are going to do. It's actually not, like this was another big epiphany for me. It was like, oh, I don't trust people. I don't like, of course I'm going to have trust issues, right? Like and we're all going to have issues because we've all been betrayed in some way or form, right? But it's actually not about that. When we can trust ourselves, the signals that we're receiving, when we're listening to our bodies, when we get that yellow flag or red flag, and we actually are like, wait a minute, okay, like let me tune into this, let me honor this, right? Which also has been conditioned out of us,
Yeah.
but when we are able to know ourselves intimately on that level and we trust ourselves even in the face of no agreement or no approval or any of that, well, then you're a force to be reckoned with.
Yeah.
And it doesn't even become about trusting other people. Like you actually will trust other people because they're showing you exactly who they are in that moment.
Yeah.
And you
And
take it at face value.
yeah, and learning that our truth, it doesn't matter what if somebody else agrees with it, or if somebody else like what they choose. We're choosing for like from our truth,
Yeah.
and being able to hold strong to that, to like the inner knowing, while also being open to like, okay, you have a different opinion, let me hear like your side of the things, and like where can I expand my knowing, or shift it a little bit to like to oh, okay, I see the truth behind that, and now like my truth becomes a bigger truth, and I listen to this person and hear, and my truth becomes bigger because I understand all these other different aspects to it, and it's grown and included this, or it's grown and excluded other things, Um, so um, it's definitely a learning process, and um, being able to stand in that truth regardless of what's happening outside of you.
Yeah, and I think that that's why it's so important. Like the healing and the energy work is really important, um, just in our everyday lives. But when I'm working with clients, to really start in that place, because it's really about, when it comes to authentic connection, when it comes to being um, a bold and gentle leader, when it comes to being visible, uh, like it's a pretty transformative journey. And when we are able to understand the impact of our families, our early experiences, our ancestry, collective things that have happened on the planet over centuries, because those things do have an impact, like you said earlier in the program. Um, and we come from that place, it becomes so much more than, you know, the latest sexy marketing strategy, right? Like, and it really becomes this deep dive, and that's the work that I do with clients, is this deep dive into discovering your aligned makeup, your aligned design. Um, I use tool like, I know we talked about human design. I use tools like human design. Um, yeah, there's a woman out there who does, I'm not certified or anything, but she does life path astrology. So I bring in elements of astrology just to help my clients get a better sense of, and these are things that they already know, but like to see it in black and white, it's validating, right? To get a better sense of like this, oh, this is actually how I'm designed,
Yep.
like divinely designed to operate in the world. Um, Similar with the gene keys, I'm not that familiar with it, but I know that that came up in our conversation, right? It's just like these mile markers that let us know, like, oh, okay, I get why I feel that way when this thing happens, or when I'm trying to do this. Like, now I understand why it feels off, because it's not aligned with who you are in your energetic DNA,
Yep.
right? And so that's where I always want to start with clients.
Yeah. Well, and even, to like your earlier point of like the doctor telling you that, how you're feeling is okay, it's right. Like, when I've done human design readings for people, they're like, wow, like that's who I know, that like that's who I've been, but other people have made me bad and wrong for that.
Right. Yeah.
And so like to like have permission to be yourself
Yeah.
is, I think, like life altering.
It is.
Um, and I was having a conversation yesterday with somebody who does the gene keys, specifically, and it was that, like, learning more about my own path, in my own like childhood core wounds, and the patterns that were still playing out. Like, once I realized, oh, like I'm not the shadow. It's part of my wounding, but like moving into the gift of who I am is like, that's the truth. And I can relate differently to people, and that permission to do that, to let go of the stories and the trauma. And I'm assuming that probably most of your clients like kind of have that epiphany of like, oh, I get to be me.
Yeah, I mean that's a huge part of it, right? Like that's a huge part of this process. And I mean, like if we want to talk about, like, that is in my astrology. Like my Chiron is in Aries, right? And so
Like,
it's all about healing the relationship with self and being who you really are, right? And that's part of the work I'm here to do in the world. Is also bringing that message to people that like there's nothing, you're not broken, there's nothing wrong with you, you're beautiful, you're whole and complete as you are. You've had these things that have, you've that have masked that,
Mhm.
and you get to decide like are you ready to release that and to bring the coaching piece into, for those who are like, yeah, like it's not working for me, so let's have like, what are my options of being different, right? Like still being yourself, but a new way of being in the world. And really, you know, transformation has a framework to it, and it starts with releasing those old, the survival patterns, the limiting beliefs, the old stories, right? And the stories don't go away, but how we relate to the story changes,
Yep.
right?
And
Like we
how
can't
we
change
and
what
how
happened in
we
the
use that
past, but we can
story. Yeah.
change how we relate to what happened in the past.
Yeah, and how we relate to others, like, not relating from the trauma and having to like react to try and get our needs met. Because like I think that's the biggest thing, especially like the childhood trauma is it's all about like trying to get our needs met.
Yeah,
And so
yeah,
we're reactive even as adults trying to get
yes,
our needs met. And because they're not our parents or they're not the caretaker, like these adult relationships, they can't fix that. And so
right.
it's learning to let that go so that like I can connect with you and I know now like what my trauma response is. And so when I'm feeling that, I have then the choice to like react and like scream and do all the things or pull away and run away, or I can say, I need a minute. I need to process. I'm feeling
Yeah.
I'm feeling triggered. It's,
Mhm.
it's me. I need to process this and then I'll be ready to talk.
Yeah.
Please give like, and to give that pause in the relationships because life is going to trigger us all the time, but it's
Yeah.
like, do we allow ourselves to be the victim or do we take control and say, okay, I need a moment here.
Yeah. And I think that takes practice, and it's and intention and commitment. And it's such a powerful thing to like, you're healing when you're actually able to do that, right? When you're able to say to someone, yeah, I'm feeling angry, or I'm feeling flooded, or like this, like I need some time and some space. And you'll know who your people are too, right? Like if they're able to give that to you and just say, oh, okay, okay, like we can take a break. Then like, okay, this is a healthy, I mean, that might not be the only marker, but like this is a healthy dynamic, right? Like this is a safe person for me,
Yep.
right? Um, and yeah, I mean, I have witnessed profound shifts in relationships when I was actually honest about how I was feeling in the moment and asked for what I needed. And what you said about like we're looking to get our needs met externally, that totally is normal and makes sense, because that's how we were as vulnerable babies and children, and we relied on the external for our survival. And as adults, it's like, no, actually, I have the power to make my needs matter.
Yep.
And we make our needs matter by speaking to how we're feeling in the moment, and what we need in the moment.
Yep. And I love what you said, like, to make my needs matter.
Yeah,
Because, especially like if you grew up in a not good um, home environment, your needs didn't matter.
didn't matter. Right. And so that is really driving. I mean, that was definitely drive, like my truth doesn't matter. My needs don't matter. My voice doesn't matter.
Yep. So,
And it's a long, if you grow up in that environment, or you have experiences like that, either culturally or collectively, like there's a lot of people in the world who have that experience, and it's like, yes, and change is possible, healing is possible, and you're far more powerful than you think. because you've believed this lie as truth for so long, but it's a lie,
Yeah.
you know? Yeah.
Yeah, I think, for myself, like the martial arts training,
Mm,
really helped me to like be able to have that strong voice and to truly be a leader because, I was like maybe one of like two female high ranking students in the school I was at. And so like having to teach men that were larger than stronger than I was and hold that space and not have the fear like take over of like I want to run in
yeah.
because like if this guy actually hits me, it's gonna hurt. But holding the space of like, if you kick me, I'm gonna kick you back harder. And knowing
Right.
like from like not maybe from a physical strength, but from a technique perspective, like I can kick harder because I know how to kick. Um, that really taught me, I think, to stand up for myself, to have a voice that like even when in corporate, when there wasn't something that was right, I would be the first person a lot of times to speak the truth.
Yeah.
Um, and then like the people behind me, and then like even like higher ranking people behind me would be like, well, yeah, that's happening. Or even people coming up to me like afterwards and being like, you spoke the words that I was thinking. You asked
Right.
the question I was thinking. And it's like, that was like such a, why am I the one who is speaking those? Why didn't you speak up? But I think, I learned how to do those things in, the martial arts, whether it overrode other parts of me, and that masculine took center stage. Um, but it's a part of myself that I love. I love that I'm not afraid to speak up.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I don't always ask for my needs, but I am getting better at that. And I am like, when there's an injustice, my warrior is like, nope, nope, nope.
Yeah. I mean, the wise warrior is just like such a beautiful, representation of you and your brand and your messaging um and I when you said like why did I have to be the one that brought the truth, right? And I'm so glad to hear you say that you love that about yourself because I was going to ask you like I totally hear that. Like I can hear my own like why does this have to be me? Like it's some sort of burden, right? Because it has been a burden.
Yes.
Sometimes it feels like a burden. And so I'm curious, it sounds like you've gotten to this place where it's like, no, actually this is one of my gift, like one of my abilities, one of my gifts, and it's an honor and it's a privilege, even though sometimes it feels like it's a burden. Like, do you feel that you've gotten to that
Yeah,
place?
and it's like in corporate, it had been like going to battle for something that wasn't my battle. Um,
Yeah,
but in business and the work that I do, because I go into the depths with my clients and do a lot of the deep healing, the past lives, like finding the root cause to like where this pattern came from so that they can release it. Um, you know, that warrior aspect of myself is gonna like question, because there's a lot of times where we have this belief that like, oh, I'm bad and wrong. And it's like, is that the truth? And like, so asking that, or like when like there's dark energy, like I've had clients where like I've had to like go into the darkness and like retrieve their souls and to
yeah,
stand there and stand guard. So it's like I've been able to direct that part of myself into, my spiritual business and what I'm here to
yeah,
do. Um, so, um, so I'm really like, but I still struggle with that, like, being seen in that way, and really like standing in the truth and being able um, to share that story in a way that like resonates with people that say, oh, this is the person that can help me. Which is why I think, somebody like you who, can help me and help others in my community and in the world, like, stand in that truth in a way that it's like you mastered the message, you mastered the story, and the communication and the way of relating to people, which really excites me about the work that you do, and how it's relevant to who I am. So I want to hear how you help people like me who like have this great purpose, and this thing that they know, um, you know, to like actually step into that boldness.
Yeah, yeah. And that's like a perfect client for me, right? Like where you know it's there. You know, it's like I I, I have something that can serve, the world, whatever that means to you, right? The world might mean 5 people. The world might mean 500 million people. Like who knows? It doesn't really matter, but to have that commitment to like I'm here for a reason, I'm here for a purpose, I want to serve, and I also know that I need to get my message and my work out there. Um, and I think that one of the difficult things as a healer is to know that within yourself and then to like not have clients. Like it's one of the most frustrating feelings. It's like and then it's like kind of starts that spiral of like I'm not here, I'm not doing what I'm here to do, right?
Or maybe I'm not supposed to be doing this.
Or
Maybe.
maybe it's yeah, am I on the wrong path? Like all the things, right? And yeah, and so really what I do, one of the first steps is number one, when somebody is interested in working with me, we do a business communications assessment. It's a form that kind of like just kind of helps me get a sense of where people are at, where a potential client is at, in a practical way, but also in that emotional way and that energetic way. And then we have a conversation, and sometimes people want to work more. Sometimes people get what they need in that conversation. Um, right now, I do retreats. You can see Sage Sensation Retreats on my Zoom title here. And I am planning a retreat for 2025. It's in the early stages, and it's going to be about helping people with their healing stories and telling those very sensitive stories in a way that feels good for them and their audience. So that's coming down the pipe right now. I'm working primarily one-on-one with clients, and yeah, and taking them through my process of revealing your true self, developing your authentic voice, and really integrating and communicating that message in a way that does feel good for you, does feel good for your audience, and really feels good in the way that you're taking that inner part of you and showing up with it out in the world,
Mhm.
right? Because there's a million different ways we can market our business. And that needs to be in alignment. Like the practical piece also needs to be in alignment too. Like you can do all that energy work and all that healing work and still pick like the wrong tactics and strategies for you. So it's really about guiding clients through um, understanding themselves at a deep level, and really saying like, yes, you have an important, your story, your message, your work, it matters. The people that you're here to serve are waiting for you, and it's normal if you're feeling a little nervous and shy and whatever the thing is, right? About being visible because it's also vulnerable. And like we can get you there. We can get you there. Yeah.
Nice.
And sometimes you're up in, if you're a speaker, for example, you might still be shaking in your boots a little bit. But you walk off that stage and you're like, yeah, yep, that landed. Right. And then okay, that was aligned. that's the energy that is reaching, like it's not only the words, it's the energy that's reaching the people I'm here to serve. So,
Yeah. Um, my first martial arts instructor, um, and he'd been a martial artist for like many, many years, taught classes, and one of the most profound things he said to me and a few other people of like, that whenever he was teaching a class or teaching a workshop, he was always like shaking in his boots for like the first 5 minutes, and then like he got into the flow of things, and it's like, oh, if this like badass, kung fu master can be shaking in his boots for 5 minutes, I can too. And so
yeah,
that was like the permission I needed to like go after even like more things and start to even speak up more and share. Um, so yeah, I think that's like we're no matter how long we've been doing things, we're gonna shake in our boots for a few minutes, and then because that's the ego.
yeah, exactly.
I'm
That's
about to
exactly it.
perform. And
Yeah,
then being in the flow and being like in the connection with your clients or your audience. So
yeah. And I think too, it's also recognizing like, yes, all of that is normal. Um, sometimes it's like the very thin distinction between excitement energy and fear
yep,
energy, right? And so sometimes you just need to take a
vibration.
breath.
Yeah.
Yep. Um, and and also to remember, it's if you can get yourself in the space of like, okay, so for example, today before we got on this conversation, I said use me.
Mhm.
It became less about me. Like, yes, there's practical reasons why I said yes to doing this, right? Like, and of course, this is going to be part of my content. I'm going to promote this. I'm going to do all those very masculine things, right? But I came on with the pure intention of like, work your magic through me. Like, I'm your vessel, right? And that kind of gets you out of that nervous, anxious energy. It's like it's not about me anymore. It's about whatever is coming out of my mouth is yeah, it's the way I would say it and the words that I would use, but it's not me.
Yeah.
You know? And that can really help settle your energy too.
Yeah. And so like at the end of it, like, oh, what did I say?
But yeah, I have no idea. Like a lot of times I do these interviews and I'm like, wow, what did I say? Like,
Especially when like, oh, when you said this, I was like, I said that.
yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah,
um,
and that's why I love working with spirit-led,
yeah.
coaches and business owners because they understand that. They understand like so many people that I work with are channels, and they're like, I said that? Yeah, yeah.
So if somebody like is listening to this either on, watching the live in my Wise Warrior group or on YouTube, like, how can somebody start to work with you?
Yeah. So if this is resonating with you, like, and you want to talk to me more, I'm always open to a conversation. You can find me at gailnoack.com. Um, you can find me on LinkedIn. I spend a lot of time on LinkedIn. That's really like I'm on other social media platforms, but really LinkedIn is kind of like where I like to play the most. So you can search for me there. Um, I believe it's Gail. If you do the LinkedIn, like the end is Gail Nowak. But you may have to search Gail Doherty Nowak because my maiden name is part of my profile. Yeah, and that's really the best way to get in touch with me. You can send me an email, Gail at thestorystylist.com if you want to have like a meet and greet conversation. If you feel like that you really want to work with me, um, you can find all that information on my website as well.
Awesome. And I'll put all the links in the comments and they'll be in the description if you're watching the YouTube video. Um, and this was a great conversation. I think like we could probably talk for like 5 hours and still have more to say.
Yeah,
Um,
I agree. I agree. Thank you. Thank you so much for the invitation to come and talk with you. And, we had such a great initial conversation. So I'm glad that we're having more conversations. And, I really hope that it resonates with, your audience, your clients who you're here to serve as well.
Yeah. To me, this is something that I think um, all of us need. Like, um, even if you're not in business, I think, like your own business, if you're working for somebody else, like, knowing your authentic self and knowing your story, especially if you want to go into leadership, like you have to know yourself and to hold that strength and access your gifts. Because I
Yeah.
think, bringing bringing our intuitive gifts and our like channeling the right messages and the right timing of things, like that's the things that's going to shift corporations, and it's
Yeah.
through
Yeah.
us shifting it. So I think, whether you're in, business, I think, spirit led, and you know that you have a bolder mission in life. Definitely reach out to Gail, um, because she'll help you get there. And I'm excited to like, dive more into your website and um, look at what's possible for me, because I'm definitely at that. Like, I'm doing the things, but it's not quite the right things. And how do I get more and more into alignment with that and really own my story? So
Yeah. Beautiful. Beautiful. Well, I look forward to more conversations with
that's
you.
me too.
Yeah.
And keep us posted about your retreats. You know, and we'll advertise it in my group. And so
Beautiful. Thank you.
welcome.
Thank you.
Thank
I
you.
will. I'll definitely keep you posted on that.
Wonderful. All right. Well, I'm sure we probably won't talk before Thanksgiving here in the States. So I hope you have a good Thanksgiving. And hopefully we'll connect again, either December or in the new year, because I would definitely like to have more conversations and more connections. So thank you so much. And if anybody has any comments or questions, please post them and I'll make sure that Gail gets them and responds. So thank you so much for saying yes.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation. I really have enjoyed it, and I love what you're doing in the world.
Thank
And
you.
yeah, you know, keep going, keep working on it, keep putting yourself out there and speaking up because it really does matter.
Yeah, thank you so much. All right. Have a good day, everyone. All right. All right. Thank you so much.
Yeah.